discussion that we'll be having. The reason we are gathered here is because 8th of September is International Literacy Day. So we wanted to take advantage of this same day and bring up some discussion pertaining to Education 2030. I wonder why you're not smiling. I don't know if what I'm saying is not funny. Anyway, all right, for now, I would want to make mention that this is in partnership with Young Women Christian Association, Young Men Christian Association, as well as Zalit as the host. And thank you so much for Unilas.
She don't want my touch. She not worry about the millions, no. She don't want my touch.
Hi, my name is Ruben Sakala, aka
Unilas, for giving us an opportunity to come here.
My name is Wendo Memba, but most of you know me
as well. Just
my name is Mbani Changaya, but y'all know me as FJ, the King of R&B of Urban Heights.
Literacy is connected to language, culture, and tradition. Literacy is much more than reading and writing. It weaves through all aspects of our lives, including culture, language, employment, education, justice, health, and access to services.
Literacy is for life. We support literacy. And you can be part of the campaign by sending selfies, a literacy message, or a video stating what literacy means to you to the Zambian Association of Literacy Facebook page.
We are part of the campaign. You should be too.
She don't worry about the millions, no. She don't want my touch. Nobody got to enter, no. She don't want my touch. She didn't feel.
Hi, my name is Rhoda Mlenga, TV presenter at QTV Zambia. Now, literacy is the ability to read, write, listen, understand in a way that you are able to communicate with others effectively. I believe in literacy because it is critical to economic development, not only that, but also to individual and community well-being. Literacy also enables me to have unlimited information because I believe an illiterate person is one that hurts not only themselves but also the community. So let's all make sure that we get that education and be literate. Support a literate Zambia. I support literacy. Do you? Go to our social media page, Zambian Association of Literacy, and join the movement.
some of you are in your phones. It's a cool thing. So after we do the discussion, I'm going to go into a very short musical break before you guys begin to do your questions and have the panel answer. So let me introduce to you the panel this afternoon. The first one is Temwanjere. Those that are from Bembaland, they'll say Jere. It's a cool thing. Nonetheless, it's not a crime. So Temwanjere, please come through to the front. Thank you very much. So Temwani, she's a student here doing development studies. I think I've met her. This is not the first time. The last time we met, there was interfaculty debate just right here at Unilas. It was a cool event. So good afternoon and thank you so much for coming. All right. The next one is Tafadzwa Sasa. She's Junior Chamber International. She's also with JCI Zambia. Thank you very much. I'm hoping I spelled the first name correctly. Tafadzwa. guys. All right, and then we have Daniel Piri, who's with Young Men Christian Association. Give him a round of applause. He's the Programs Development Secretary. Good afternoon, lady and gents. We have Marita Banda. She's an author, a private tutor, and also SOTRAIN director. Good afternoon, and thank you very much. And then we have Muila C. Banda. He's a student of Politics International Relations. He's also an author of 3 books, working on his 4th book. I think we'll discuss this after. I'm interested in book. He's also director of My Africa Foundation. Please come through to the front. Last but not the least, we have the ambassador of Zambia for the Center of Learning and Education Development Africa, as well as Zambian Association of Literacy Educative Director, Mr. Shuko Mzimangezi. Please. So to the audience, thank you very much for taking your time to be here, and as well as people that are able to watch us live from wherever. We want to thank you so much for taking this time. So right about now, the team that you see here will have a very fantastic 45 minutes discussion with the team. And I'm hoping that you're going to learn a lot. And please, if you can, take down your notes and questions that you'd want to ask, as well as also maybe just contributions or, seconding the ideas and what we are looking at. Madam Marito, thank you so much. Good afternoon. Temwani, good afternoon. Mr. Mwila, looking smart. No one is looking like a gentleman apart from myself. All of them are. So, for some reason, standing feels good. But yakudara jatunganyonke blood. But let's go straight into our discussion. So, the team that you see here will help us with the discussion for this afternoon. And I wonder why also they are not smiling. Obviously, they've got their reasons why. So we'll start with to sit. I feel like Shakasari for some reason. Yeah. I look good. Thank you very much for the recommendation that I'm looking good. Thank you. Coming from a lady. All right, so I'll start with Marita. And the first question is, what does Literacy Day mean to you?
Thank you very much for the question. Literacy Day, to me, is a very important occasion for us to recognize the fact that we are able to read and write, because that's what literacy is all about. So for me, it's an opportunity for all of us to get together and look at what our opportunities are and what are the challenges, especially for the population that is unable to read and write in a world where, this is 2017, it is unacceptable that people our age are unable to read. So that's something that we can address. This is an opportunity for us to look at how can we change the world so that everyone has access, equal access to the ability to read and write. Because for us, we take it for granted. It is a basic thing, and it should be a right and a privilege that should be enjoyed by everyone. So that's what Literacy Day means to me.
All right, even though you've not clapped, it's okay. She's spoken so well. looking at the world and how things are moving at this particular time, I remember back in the days we used to do the writing in a very, I would say, traditional way. But the fact that we've evolved, I'm looking at what some of the advantages that people can, take to keen interest in terms of putting and promoting literacy. Looking at where we are coming from as African, people used to, communicate via drums, and then, we evolved. We started doing, mails, and then now we are into the digital world. But what are some of the advantages of celebrating literacy day like this one, Mwila?
Thank you so much for the question. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. One thing I want to understand is that the world is changing. And because the world is changing, as a generation, we also have to change with it. Being static in itself is a hindrance to progression. And if we as a continent, we're not moving with the manner in which the world is moving, I want to understand that even national development, even the achievement of the sustainable development goals of which we desire to achieve cannot be enhanced or rather be brought into desire. One thing I want to understand is that, having a day such as this one is that, a majority of us who are seated here, all of us can read and write. But what about individuals out there in the war zone? What about individuals out there in the rural areas of our environment, in the rural areas of the deepest parts of Africa, in the remote areas, so to speak? So having a day such as this, I believe it's a wake-up call, not only for us, but even for a generation of young people out there. So even as we sit here to discuss this beautiful discussion, we should not only end here. The moment we leave this place, it begins to evaporate from the plates of our minds. But let us take a keen interest as a generation of young people who are sitting in this place right now to help other young people out there understand the benefits of reading and writing. Mind you, we are moving into a dimension of creativity and innovation. And if our generation cannot read and write, I would want to understand it to be difficult for us to achieve that fundamental objective. Thank you so much.
It's okay even if you still don't clap. We understand. I'll go back to one of the reasons for the 2017 International Literacy Day theme. So I want to take this question to Mr. Shuko. What is your interpretation of International Literacy Day theme?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kazmik. To start with, I think I should really commend the Zambian Association of Literacy team, because we have run away from the traditional Literacy Day celebrations where it's a march past, people come and give speeches, promissory notes, but to bringing the light of what literacy really is to the world and to the nation as well. So this is the first step to actually driving the national development agenda in the realization of Education 2030 goal, because then literacy is at the root of that. Coming to the theme, which is beautifully put on the banner, literacy in a digital world. And I think Mwila rightly put it. We have evolved as a generation. We have evolved as a nation. And it's very important for all of us to then evolve with this generation in terms of any intervention that we're trying to put across. Reading, well, reading is a challenge in Zambia. Hard copy books, people don't read. So how about we try to adapt to what the world is accepting? Everyone is on their laptops, everyone is accessing mobile phones. In here, I think everyone has a tablet. Digital world has embraced literacy so far. The University of Lusaka here where we are, I think everything has been digitalized. Payments today have been digitalized. Reading materials for school has been digitalized. And we are soon moving into the world of M-learning, because then we have realized that the target audience for such interventions are all on social media. We have internet growth and digital usage at approximately 14.76% as a country so far, which shows that, well, at least we're striving to get to wider coverage. So basically, I think the major take-home on the theme for this year's International Literacy Day is that all literacy interventions should evolve with the digital world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shuko. Well put. I should make mention that I think a number of young people today are able to take almost even 5 hours, if well calculated, on social media, reading, people's writings, comments, writing those things. So I think it's an ideal thing that we need to move with the world as things are evolving. Coming to that core, let me take this opportunity as well to get to this question for Mr. Daniel. How is education articulated in the Agenda 2030? Because we are moving at a very innovative time.
Thank you so much for that question. When we talk about Agenda 2030, it's a plan of action that has been put in place by the countries in the world to ensure that we reach a certain position as a global entity. And when you talk about education being articulated in Agenda 2030, I believe it's articulated as a priority. It's number one priority in the Agenda 2030. And in Agenda 2030, education is seen as a fundamental human right, where people should not be discriminated from, where it doesn't matter what age you're at, it doesn't matter if you're 60, it doesn't matter if you are 5, you still have to have this particular access to education. Education is also articulated as something that is good. Okay, if you look at Agenda 2030, it speaks of education as something that is good and vital for somebody's well-being. You realize that education is not only a stand-alone when you look at the agenda itself. It is interlinked with other goals, meaning that it is a good thing. And one other thing that we should not run away from is that education is also articulated as an important aspect of fighting the gender imbalance that is there in the world. So it speaks of gender equality, where we're saying that each and every person, irrespective of their gender, has to have access to education. So basically, that is how I feel education is articulated in Agenda 2030.
Even if you haven't clapped, still, it's okay. Still commenting. But I'm hoping that we're getting one or two things as an audience, as well as putting down some notes on what the panelists are speaking about. Coming to the response that Mr. Shuko gave, I'm looking at now Tafadzwa with, don't you think the people in the remote areas, it will take time for them to evolve into the digital world in terms of literacy, knowing that we are also struggling to get, the literacy mandate to them, and now bring the digital world as well? Is it going to pull through, or we are looking at it's going to take a lot of time for us to attain that goal?
Thank you. That is a very interesting question. One day, very recently, I was appalled when I realized that the things that we take for granted, like WhatsApp, social media, Facebook, people who cannot read, somebody who has not gone to school and learned how to read, cannot fully partake of WhatsApp. They cannot enjoy Facebook because they don't know how to read, full stop. It's one thing for somebody to be unable to read, say, English, but to totally not be able to read, for me, that was such a shocking realization. And I think when we tap that into in its full context and we fully comprehend that when some people are not getting access to education, we are leaving a lot of people behind. When we are not empowering people to be a part of the solution, they remain a part of the problem. So in as much as we may have all these initiatives and all these things that we're trying to do in the rural areas, if we are not empowering the people in the rural areas with the basic literacy skills of reading and writing and just basic education, we are doing ourselves a disservice. And it's going to take us a long time to do anything else that we want to do. So digitalization is good, but we need to look at how do we harness digital tools and digital experience to ensure that we fast track the education and the literacy intervention in the rural areas. So unless we start to think that way, it's going to actually take us a bit back. Because now we are excluding them by introducing interventions that are further excluding them.
Fantastic. Being a lady, I was hoping to see some ladies standing up and say, that's what I'm talking about. But it's okay. It's okay. I know. I'm hoping so. All right. I have seen some challenges with. I think there's been a lot of agenda pushing in terms of girls and women being part of the, ICT and also as well as the reading and the writing. Timwani, what do you think can be the ideal way on which girls and women are supposed to, take keen interest in literacy agenda?
I believe for every community, a woman is a stronghold of each and every household and community. And taking us back or far back, every time we hear about poverty or any issues to do with the negativity towards development, we say it has got a face of a woman. So I feel the need that to face these challenges, we have to involve women in participating in all developmental projects or programs for women to be educated at all levels of education, vocational training as well, so that we can empower them with the right skills. And so to say, when you educate a woman of a household, I believe no mother or no woman will actually let their children be illiterate. Because even if we look at the literacy percentages, we will notice that the female population holds 55.9% of literacy. The rest are illiterate. With this, we have noted that most of the times we forego the woman perspective of development. We tend to focus on the males because we are maybe, let's say, a patriarchal society. Everything that we're focusing on is the male. So if we're going to transition from that part of idea, then I think we'll try to face other challenges that hinder women in education and literacy.
It's okay. She's a young lady. At least two people are clapping. It's a cool thing. It's a cool thing. Well, those of us that are watching us from Facebook, you can also, be part of the discussion. You can send through your comments as well as also your suggestions and contributions. We'll be able to read those comments later on in the discussion. Coming back to Madam Marita, we have reached I think at the time and age where we see, especially let me bring it down to Zambia, we have seen a lot of corporate world tending to support a lot of activities to do with non-literacy, of course, in terms of they are going to sports, and other events, but there are very few corporate entities that are coming on board to support literacy. What do you think could be the problem, and what is your mindful solution to that?
Thank you so much. We are currently, as a nation, facing a very, very serious crisis in that we do not have our priorities right. Like you have rightly put it, there's a lot of investment in sporting activities, for instance, and also in music. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that maybe we need to go back to the agenda and look at what is most urgent, what is most important. And so I think that there are some corporate entities that have recognized that, but there are few, not enough of them paying attention to that. So I can cite, I think it's Barclays and Stanbic. They have this financial literacy program where they're sponsoring children in secondary schools. And that's a very good initiative. I think it's been going on for some time, maybe 4 years now. And we see them invited to the State House and they, to just recognize the achievement that these young people are receiving from the mentorship that they're getting from the bank. So I think that's a very important and a good thing, because in our country right now, financial literacy is needed, not just for the children, even for parents and adults like us. We don't know how to make a budget. We don't know how to stick to it. And getting that financial literacy at a young age is a very important thing. But aside from that, just the basic skill of being able to read and write, there's a lot that the corporate world can do, in that they can invest in education, the education of the very, very young age, from grade 1 to grade 4. They can look into sponsoring some of the children whose parents are unable to take them to school. They don't need to move them from their communities. They can build education institutions in their communities, and the children can have access to education. That is something that I think the corporate world can look into. We don't have to wait until the children get into secondary school. Let's get back to the basics. Let them learn how to read and write, so that by the time they get to grade 7, they're ready for their financial literacy, and it doesn't have to be something that is done by just the banks. It can be something that can be done by other corporate entities that are interested, because money and finances are part of our daily life, whether we are literate or not. So I think that they need to come on board at much younger ages than secondary school. So I at this point, I also wish to recognize the work that they're doing in secondary schools. The spelling bee is one of them. The debate, those are good initiatives, but I think it's time for corporate world to go younger. Thank you.
At least we are moving together. That's a smile for me. Don't forget, in case you are watching us live, you've tuned into our Facebook feed live, you can come through with your contribution and comments as well. We'll be able to read them as we continue with the discussion. She's mentioned something very important, and I want to take this to Tafazo as well to say, is it important that, parents get to, get back to school and learn to read and write? There are those parents that do not know how to read, and then imagine you're taking your child to school, and then they come with certain assignments and then ask you to help them, and then you have no idea, you can't read. Is it important that they should go back to school, or they should, just get to leave them to go to extra lessons and so on?
Well, that is an interesting question when you think about it, because once people are adults, there's a variety of responsibilities that fall upon them, and there are different factors that affect their ability to actually go back into a classroom and actually sit through the whole day and be learning. What might be more effective might be, for example, when you talk about things like evening classes, because when people are parents and adults, they have responsibilities. So it's important for us to create programs that allow them to attend to their responsibilities, but still have a space to actually learn. We cannot underestimate the value of a parent's literacy to a child's learning and how far a child goes. I'm sure a lot of us here can attest to the fact that we are where we are because our parents invested into our education. And granted that the education system, unfortunately the education system in a lot of African countries is quite basic, and up to today I still don't understand why I had to learn that pi r squared is equals to whatever. But my thing is, our system has a lot of things that we have been using from before independence, and we're still using those same curriculums. For a lot of people who are actually advancing and using their education, our parents had a great influence on those things because they showed us other options and the other things that we could do outside of the classroom. So it is critically important for parents to get literacy, because then they're also showing their children other options. However, we cannot force them to go back into the classroom or expect them to go into the classroom because they have other responsibilities that they need to attend to. So we need to craft programs that allow them to handle their responsibilities, but still access literacy and education.
Thank you very much. We have some comments from Facebook. This one is coming from Michael Stumbeko. He's asking a question. He says, in Zambia, progressing in the next years to come. Is Zambia progressing in the next years to come? Though he didn't put in terms of in which category, in terms of you need to qualify more on that one. This one is saying, I think as individuals we need to figure out where we stand in the Agenda 2030. This is coming from Wanangwa. And then this one is coming from Maria Capepula. She's saying, women empowerment, increasing literacy levels in Zambia. It's very vital. Thank you very much. You can still come through with your contribution, and then we'll be able to read them through as we get, interactive with our discussion. Let me get this one to Shuko. How is literacy mainstreamed in the general education Agenda 2030?
Thank you so much. Probably what we should understand is, I'll give the definition of literacy from the Zambian Association of Literacy perspective. Most people reduce literacy to just the basic reading and writing, which I think is a very serious problem. Because then, if I'm able to read and write, then what? So it goes beyond just the basic reading and writing. It's then how people go on to make and communicate meaning out of what they're able to read and write by using the social strands of language, the reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So I think we should rethink how we look at literacy, because if we look at it from its broad perspective, then we'll include everyone, and then we'll have a holistic approach rather than just looking at it from reading and basic writing. So coming to the 2030 development agenda, I think Daniel really hinted on the fact that the strategies that the 2030 agenda is looking into is creating lifelong learning opportunities, mainstreaming gender equity and equality in the global development agenda, and further on looking at the quality of education. But then we would never attain quality education not until we look at the basics that people actually need. So the 2030 agenda actually recognizes and emphasizes the need for literacy, especially functional literacy and numeracy, as the key drivers of this 2030 agenda. Because then she spoke of financial literacy, a very, very good intervention. But then if people have not reached or attained numeracy, literacy numeracy, then there's still a problem. Because you'll be trying to teach people that are not able to process what you're saying. And if you've just given them the basic reading and writing, they're not able to make meaning out of what you're saying. So it goes beyond just the basic reading and writing. And what's very exciting again is the global commitment to harnessing education. There's a new drive of investing in young people for Africa's renaissance. And what they're emphasizing is economic growth. But how then do we grow Africa's economy? It starts at country level. And what is very important is investment in education. Because then education drives leadership and governance, it drives health, and it drives an economy that creates jobs. So we really are happy as the Zambian Association of Literacy because we feel literacy has been put at the core of giving the basic skills that will help mainstream education into the whole global development agenda. Thank you.
Well, man, if you've not clapped, it's okay. We are into that phase as well. Thank you very much for those contributions. I have, I think most of us that live in our communities, I'm one of the victims that I've seen where someone puts up a post and says, sausage for sale, it's in black and white, there's no sausage whatsoever. And then I'm imagining someone who doesn't know how to read. How can they know that they're selling sausage here? And it's very funny anyway. But these are the things that we need to improve on. Tali, I'm looking at also how can literacy be harnessed with digitalization?
You just called me Mutari. Muila. Okay, it's fine. You can clap for him for the mistake, by the way. Okay. First and foremost, I want to comment on how corporate entities should play a role in enhancing literacy in our country. I want to understand that, corporate entities primarily, they exist for profit maximization. So social corporate responsibility is something that they do when they desire to do or they desire not to do. So one thing I want to state is that when we go to America in 1929, when they had the Great Depression, one thing that John Keynes stated to the American government is that every private entity that desires to invest in our country should also invest in the diverse areas that participate to national development. And one of them was education. So I want to understand, even we as a continent, whichever foreign company that desires to invest in our country should also play a role in investing to the other things that also pertain to national development, or else they can pack their bags and leave. That's one thing. Because if they just come in to maximize their profit and they leave, then they're not maximizing the manner in which we also have to develop as a country, because they also have to play a role. That's one thing I just wanted to state. And the other part of the question that you had asked me is that, you know, it's kind of hard to answer that question, because if our leaders, they do not diversify the manner in which they allocate their resources pertaining to education, we will not even meet the issue of literacy in a digital world. Because if only resources are only allocated to environments which are urbanized, then we're only benefiting a particular environment, or rather a particular category of individuals. So even if the manner in which our leaders, they allocate resources also benefits individuals that are in the remote areas of our country, the remote areas of our states, then I believe we are going to be able to achieve the theme that we are moving with today. We can all of us can visualize and imagine this, you know, where all of us, you know, we have the ability to digitalize every literacy that we come across. But if this is only given to individuals that are in the universities, in the colleges, in high schools, in urban areas, then we're not doing justice to social development and to future development itself. So my plea right now is that the leadership of our states should look into the system in which they allocate resources to benefit both the rural setup, the remote areas, as well as the urban territories of our land.
Okay. He has a following. All right. Some of the comments coming through from Facebook. Someone named Eunice Mukuka says, the biggest challenge that we use as a nation is having no teacher, having that no teacher is willing to move to the rural areas. I feel the government should set right boundaries. This one also is coming from Eddie Mukanta. I agree with Shuko. Literacy is one's ability to read and understand, write and make sense out of it. It's a good contribution. Thank you so much. You can continue throwing those comments on our Facebook right about now. Now, I want to think at this level that men are doing so good. I'm not being gender insensitive. Or men are doing so good to some extent. But to get to move to a level where we have equality and equity, we need to carry, along the women, to participate in terms of national development. Now, Teman, in your understanding, how can we achieve, the movement in engaging women to participate in the agenda of, fostering good literacy abilities?
For us to actually achieve it, I believe all programs, policies, and plans should actually mainstream. There should be some gender mainstreaming in it. And all of these programs should actually be gender sensitive, meaning whichever program we formulate or implement should actually involve a fair percentage or an equitable percentage of women in it. Because we have noticed in many times, like, for example, it would be like a program where they say maybe 40% should be women participating in it. Why should it be 40%? Why can't we have equal rights? Like, why can't it be 50-50? Or since women have been lagging behind for so long, why can't we actually be the ones who are, like, being treated right? Equity in itself. Why can't it be 60% of the women and 40% of the men? We don't see that. And I think with that mentality, we women also start thinking we are actually nothing. We actually think a man should head every single thing. Okay, I won't go against culture. Maybe a man should head the household. But let's look at the nation itself. We say it's Mother Zambia, quite all right, but we don't specifically mean each and every head should be a male. So we can actually focus on certain interventions that involve women in each and every single program that we're actually moving forward to. Because for us to actually reach sustainable development goals, each and every single goal of it requires that this thing should be inclusive of whatever gender, disabilities, or whichever human being you are. So for literacy and everything else, like education, for example, we have to focus on women as well in an equitable way, not equal way, but equitable way, so that women can actually reach to the standards that we portray men to be in. Because I strongly believe a woman has more to offer than everything else.
All right, she is a debater, and she's coming out all strong for some reason. Anyway, I have the mention of Mother Zambia, so yeah. I was looking at how the gentleman was looking at her when she was speaking like this, you know. I like speaking. Are you sure what you are saying, you know? But anyway, he's gonna comment on that one. On a quick note, Tafadzwa, how can education strengthen the effectiveness of institutions, school leadership, and governance?
Thank you. So I'm still very, Shuko's definition of literacy just really had me thinking, and it hit me hard because I think we tend to take that for granted, you know. Just if you can read and write, then you're literate. But you know that definition to say reading to understand and writing to make sense, that really makes a difference. And you know, when we now look at even the question that you have given unto me in institutes, schools, and all the other organizations that exist, when we start to look at it from a perspective of we don't want just people who can read, or we don't want just people who can write, but people who can understand and make sense, then that's really going to change the game. Sadly, at the moment, we're just focusing on ensuring that people can read and write. And that is how we are in the place where we are today. We have people who are educated, but they are not able to translate their education into actual change. They are not able to translate their education into adjusting their institutions or their organizations to meet the changing needs, right? So my sister, they spoke very strongly about even the issue of how women are being excluded. Sadly, we live in a patriarchal system. Believe it or not, there are so many forces that are we are deeply, deeply patriarchal. And so for as long as, in as much as a child, say for example, a sister and a brother go to grade 1 together, by the time they're getting to grade 3, the sister has more responsibilities in the house than the brother. And there's this thing that, you know, girls are going to get married anyway, so what's the point? Sadly, we have come to a time where even married girls do need to bring a share to the table, right? So we need to have conversations where we understand that it's not enough to just be educated. It's not enough to just send a child to pre-primary school and say, now you can read and write, so go to your husband and count the money he brings home or whatever. That won't cut it anymore. We need to, and I love Zalit's definition, and I think we could have a discussion around how do we incorporate this literacy definition into all the conversations we're having, even in terms of qualifying people into leadership of organizations, ministries, the country at large. If we are considering people who can read or write, we're going to have problems because they are not understanding, neither are they making sense when they write or speak.
Okay. If we didn't clap to that one, I was going to, you know, stand for some reason and say, what's going on, you know. You can continue sending those comments on our Facebook, and as well as we'll be reading them right here on our discussion. I don't know how we are feeling. I feel the panel, for some reason, they had a group meeting for this discussion. But anyway, it's a good thing at the end of the day. I hope. I'm hoping you're having a great time. And then we'll be going on a very short musical break to give these guys some breathing space. And then when we come back, we continue with our discussion. So we're going to have Zama Live give us a piece of singing and poetry pertaining to literacy and International Literacy Day.
This girl be the baddest. Tourist music. She don't want my touch. She not worry about the millions, no. She don't want my touch.
Hi, my name is Ruben Sakala, aka Batman Shapi of Urban High. My name is Wendo Mwemba, but most of you know me as the AJ from Urban High.
My name is Mbani Changaya, but y'all know me as FJ, the King of R&B of Urban High.
Literacy is connected to language, culture, and tradition. Literacy is much more than reading and writing. It weaves through all aspects of our lives, including culture, language, employment, education, justice, health, and access to services.
Literacy is for life. We support literacy. And you can be part of the campaign by sending selfies, a literacy message, or a video stating what literacy means to you to the Zambian Association of Literacy Facebook page.
We are part of the campaign. You should be too.
She don't worry about the millions, no. She don't want my touch. Nobody got to enter, no. She don't want my touch. She dey feel, she dey yeah.
Afternoon, guys. Sorry. My name is Lengwe Mlenga, and I'm a poet. Yeah, and I'm representing Zama Live. Yeah, so I'll be giving you some piece of poetry. Mic check 1 2. See, we're living in a world that's free, but the truth is really expensive to comprehend. Living in a world where hanging with your best friend's spouse seems to be the trend. But see, I know a friend who's got a girl and that girl got a best friend. His lady trusts them both, so every time she got an emergency phone call, she was okay to leave and leave them together instead. But what happened next? Nope, she didn't see this one coming. Her man and best friend secretly hooked up, and now they accidentally got a baby on their way, and nope, they didn't see that one coming either. So she confronted her man, but he exclaimed that all he wanted was to have some, and besides, SEX is the name of the game. Despite all she had endured for him, that's all her effort in vain. She cries her heart out all night and feels like going insane. But when her tears dry up, she stopped praying and asked God to help her overcome her pain. So now her feelings changed. Cold-hearted is what she's become, and now she thinks all men are the same. But is she to blame? See, they say life is a roller coaster. Sometimes you win, sometimes you fall. She thought she met a man that looked beyond her flaws. She had a best friend that she now don't know. But I guess it is true, the enemy you know is better than the friend you don't. The two people she cared about most decided to double-cross her and had no idea to how this would end. So while she was faithful, they chose to pretend. See, if you can relate to this, this is not your love story, but the truth you probably didn't want to hear. But it don't matter your perspective, it is not too late to face this problem that you fear. For every time that you fall, there's only one place you can go. You seek God, for He is the only one in control.
Okay, welcome back. That is a piece from Zama Live. It's a good story. For some reason, I feel like it's a movie I'm watching, closing my eyes. Yeah, so we're going to take one last question, and then we get to interact with you guys, some of the questions that you've jotted down, and some of the contributions that you have pertaining to the discussion that we've been having from the time we started. So this one goes to Mr. Daniel himself. What is the role of education in fostering national development?
What is the role of education in fostering national development? I believe education is the key to development. Shuko mentioned the organization's definition of literacy, and that, or to me, it comes back to education. Okay, it comes back to education, as it were, be it formal or informal. But still there's an element of education. And why I say it's very, very important for education to be there for national development is we are living in an era where we have the largest number of young people. Right now, this is the time in the entire world that we've had the highest number of young people. We have an approximate population of 1.8 billion young people. Now, I'll give you a simple scenario. Look at a total number of 1.8 billion young people who are uneducated, young people who cannot read, they cannot write. Not only that they can't do that, but they can not also be able to communicate whatever they are able to learn. Where would we see ourselves? Would you say we will be developing or will be stagnant? So that is why I'm saying that education plays a very, very important role in bringing about development, as it were. And especially that as a continent, as a nation, we are saying that we need to harness the demographic dividend. I'm sure you've heard of what the African Union is mentioning about tapping into the potential of young people. The only way we can tap into the potential of young people is when young people are empowered. They are empowered with the knowledge, they are empowered with the skills, they are empowered with the literacy that they need. All that comes back to education. And that is the thing that drives me, I must say, being part of an organization that empowers young people. I think that is what drives me every day. I wake up early in the morning, not because of the salary that I'm given, but because I want to make a difference. Okay? I want to make a difference in the life of a young person. I want to make a difference in my community, in my society, and in my nation. And that is why I value the aspect of education and ensuring that education plays a very, very cardinal and vital role in us developing and in us ensuring that we reach our sustainable development, as it were.
Well, I'm sorry. There's a point that is very important that we have to drive to beef up what my colleague has just said. It's very important to look at education with regards to development, because he's brought up a very important point that the African Union is driving now, harnessing the demographic dividend and tapping into the potential that young people have. Right now, young people are faced with a huge challenge of unemployment. It's not a myth. It's a serious challenge. And this is as a result of an education system that is not producing or graduating qualified students for the market demand. So there's a huge skills mismatch between what the demand of the market is and what learning institutions are offering, or what the education system can actually really produce. So our take home on this really important issue is the fact that education system should be market demand driven. That's the only way we're going to really run away from poverty or develop this country. Because then, if not, I think we still have a lot of work to do.
Well, I get to the comments that the two gentlemen have put up. I remember I was in an office of some man, and there was a university graduate seeking for work, and he was given some practical work to do. But then before, there was some interviews, but he was very confident, like Temwani was when talking about women, confident like that. But when it came to practical work, putting whatever he was speaking into practice, there was a challenge. It's because, you see, we are mentored in a way that we know what we are mentored for, but challenged to execute what we are mentored for. So I think we need to get to a level where we get beyond the books and the knowledge that they put in us, which is very good, valid points. So we're going to get to ask some questions from the audience, but then we have just one condition. When you stand up to ask your question, you don't look at me or the panelists, you look at the camera right over there, so that they see your pretty face and your handsome face all together. we do it together. So let me take the first two sets of questions. Okay.
Mulishan was. My name's Gwebe Kawunda, and as they were all speaking, something was ringing in my mind. I want to know what all of you are doing about teachers that do the teaching course just to make money. Like you mentioned things about empowering, about, education, but there are people that do teaching courses just to make money. So when they're in charge of those classrooms or the people in those classes, they just do it to mark books and get their paycheck. So what are you doing about making people that are in charge of educating, students or pupils, the importance of education? What are they doing? Are they really empowering, when they're done with school, what are they thinking? Like Mr. Shuko said, you can read and you can write, then what? So what are you doing to make teachers and lecturers to understand the importance of empowering pupils and students?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Claudia Chimense. I don't know how many questions we can ask at a time. Okay. My first question is, we're looking at education in a digital world. So my question is, should we do away with the traditional methods of teaching how to read and write? Looking at the reality at the moment is there are people out there that don't even know that there's a TV that exists. They don't even know that Facebook exists. So living in a digital world, should we completely do away with traditional methods of teaching?
So that the panelists don't forget, they might answer the last question for the first question. I think I'll take this one to Mwila. I'm correct this time? Yeah. Round of applause for me, please. Yeah. All right, so the first question, what are we doing in terms of having those teachers that I'm sure, maybe for lack of a better term, that don't really even have a passion for teaching, but they just want to go there because it's a job, they want to earn a living. I'm sure we have those challenges when we're at school. I faced them at some point, I guess.
Thank you so much. I personally, I'm working on a research, trying to analyze as to whether the education system that we have as a continent contributes to national development. And when this research is done, I aim to submit it to the African Union. Because if we really look at it, we are living at a time when we have so many graduates from the field of economics. But yet our African economy in itself is racing on sinking sand, isn't it? We have so many graduates from the field of engineering, but yet we still get the Chinese to do our roads. We have so many graduates from the field of medicine, and yet we are still debating as to whether there's a cure of HIV and AIDS. And I begin to wonder how are we developing our mindset, so to speak. Even at the University of Lusaka, we are taught to memorize, so to speak, isn't it? We are taught to memorize. The majority of individuals are very good memorizers, but never good at practicality. You see, so I'm trying to analyze as to whether the education system we have as a continent contributes to national development. And out of the analysis that we can have, primarily it never contributes, isn't it? It never contributes. We are taught to work for another individual, not basically to contribute to the development of our great continent. So the only way that we can move from this paradigm situation in which we are in right now is when we begin to revisit our education system. And we can do what we can do, but at the end of the day, our leaders have got the upper hand to meet in that demand that my brother had asked of earlier on. So it's also an issue that our leaders need to look into. But we shall do our part as citizens, But our leaders have the upper hand to ensuring that that is met. Thank you.
May I comment on that? Okay, I would like to comment on the question that he asked because I am a teacher by profession, even though I am not practicing in the mainstream. So to answer that question, I think the government has started to do something about making sure that we have the right people in the profession. So one of the things that they have done is they have created the Teaching Council. And the Teaching Council is there to ensure that some of those problems of people going into the system because they're looking for a salary are being catered for. And if you have been attentive, just in the past week, there was a revelation that some of the teachers may have teaching qualifications, but they actually did not make it to enter into teaching institutions. So they do not have grade 12 certificates. How did they get into the system? So that's what the Teaching Council is doing. They're screening. They're screening everyone to ensure that they just have the best quality. So they have put in place that system where they're awarding licenses to only people that have met the criteria. And also, it's not just with the government teachers. It's with teachers that are teaching in the international schools and in the private schools. I don't think that the international schools are affected so much because they have very serious screening processes for you to enter an international school because they know they're looking for international standards. But for our private schools, even just the owners of the schools, because the first thing for them, this is a business. They're not really interested in the quality. And so if they have a quality teacher and they're looking for a certain salary, they will not hire them. They'll prefer an untrained teacher or someone who did not complete their studies. So that is something that is being done to look into that. But also, I think we should not wait for the government. As parents, when we're enrolling our children, we have a right to demand for quality education because we are paying for that. And regardless if we're paying or not, it is your responsibility to ensure that you're taking your child to a place where you know that they will not only learn to read and write and understand, but also they're receiving moral education, which is lacking. We heard about that story last weekend of young people getting together and having an orgy. That should not happen. If your children are going to a school where you know that you have teachers that are properly qualified, there will be no chance for that overlaps to happen. That's my comment on that.
Yeah. I mean, before he comes in, I think we need to get to a level as well where, I mean, you are paying for something and then you're supposed to be given something that is of quality. I think I remember I was at a store at one point and then I was buying something. It was 2 days to expire. And then so I called the sales representative and then I said, this is 2 days to expire. And then she said, no, in fact, it's not. It even goes, maybe it expires after 2 days of the date that is put on there. You see, but then in my understanding, I realized that this person doesn't have the right mentorship. And I needed to get a service for my money. The demand for, I promise to pay the bearer on demand kind of question.
Thank you so much. I think I also wanted to add my voice to the question that was asked by the gentleman as to what are we doing to ensure that we sort out the problem that he mentioned. As a YMCA, I think we are doing quite a lot. As you know, we are a non-governmental organization and we are part of the civil society. And the thing that we are doing is we are educating community members, okay, on what is entitled to them and for them to be able to not ask but demand, okay, to demand for their rights, okay. Everyone is entitled to the right to quality education, not just education, but quality education. And so I was just having a side talk with Shuko here, where we were talking about the aspect of social accountability. I think it's very, very important for us as members of society not to always wait for government, not to always wait for the teaching council, okay? It's also mandated upon us as members of society to provide checks and balances, okay? Provide checks and balances. If a teacher is not teaching, there's someone who's supervising that teacher, okay? Go to that person and tell them this person is not delivering on their deliverables. That way everyone will be held accountable. The problem is that in our nation, we are so relaxed. We have this laissez-faire kind of attitude where if something bad is happening, you just go like, nififine. But you realize that your life is not the same, okay? Your rights are being trampled upon. And so it's very important. It's a very good question that you asked, but I think it comes back to you as well. What is it that you are doing? You can ask me and I'll tell you what I'm doing, but do an introspection as well. What is it that you are doing to make a change in your community, as it were?
I think Daniel has really echoed so much on social accountability, which I think is a very good model for the global agenda when it comes to the 2030 education goal. We should run away from looking at government as this parent. We are all stakeholders fostering national development. So government is a partner. And remember, we should all know our roles if this partnership has to work. Government provides policy direction. Civil society and you and I provide the actual implementing strategies. The actual implementation is ours. And it's us to further on go and track, have we achieved this? Have we done this? So the social accountability model runs away from us blaming government all the time. But then it puts into perspective how then do we hold ourselves accountable as well. And one thing about the sustainable development goals is that we should run away from business as usual. If we are going to develop or attain any of these goals, business as usual has to end. We've been doing the traditional stuff. It hasn't worked. We've been calling for meetings to have people that will bring brilliant ideas, how we'll better develop, and it doesn't work. So it means we have to innovate. We need to leave no one behind. Everyone's say, everyone's stake is very, very important.
Hi, my name is Rhoda Mlenga, TV presenter at QTV Zambia. Now, literacy is the ability to read, write, listen, understand in a way that you are able to communicate with others effectively. I believe in literacy because it is critical to economic development, not only that, but also to individual and community well-being. Literacy also enables me to have unlimited information because I believe an illiterate person is one that hates not only themselves but also the community. So let's all make sure that we get that education and be literate. Support a literate Zambia. I support literacy. Do you? Go to our social media page, Zambian Association of Literacy, and join the movement.
Way of doing things, knowing that we are going to the digital world, or we already are into the digital world. Things are moving, analog is fading away slowly. That I think, to me, for some reason, there are still people that are using battery motoka to watch TV back in the remote areas. These things are still happening. There are people that are still using candles and lamps to still live in those days. So now, getting back to should we do away with a traditional way of doing things because we are getting into the digital world?
Eventually, we will not have an option about it. Things will just be outgrown. It's almost like, I'm sure when cell phones came in, there was a conversation to say, do we do away with landlines? And slowly but surely, they are being phased out. But I think we need to be cautious and to be aware and understanding that in as much as digitalization is coming in, there's still places where they will not be accessing digitalized education systems in a long time, right? I know one school which has totally gone the whole digital way. The American International School, I was joking with somebody and they were saying that their children don't even know chalks because they don't have chalkboards. Their children do all their learning on iPads and they have digitalized whiteboards. So literally if you were to have a conversation with them, they would say, why are we still using books, right? So we need to be aware that there is that difference and we need to bring in people at the various levels. There are schools right now where there are no books. There are no classrooms. There are no teachers. So for us to say, let's phase out the traditional ways of learning, that's not going to work. We need to be aware and try to keep up with change, but we also still need to be conscious to say, there are places where there's no electricity to even charge the technology or the digital things that come in. So yes, eventually it will happen, but for now, we need to see how do we complement the two things. How do we complement the digital and the traditional ways?
All right, let me get to read some of the comments that came through. Emmanuel is saying the future is bright. Thank you very much. Nachizia is saying, this is good. We need more of these discussions. We know that the source of all our problems is ignorance and illiteracy. Zalit wishes to address this. Thank you very much. And thank you, guys. At least the good comments. I was hoping for someone to shoot one of these people. But, you know, I'm waiting for that comment. James is saying, true. Qualifying leaders is also an issue. Lucy Pili is saying, the source of all problems is ignorance as well. Through such discussions, you help us realize that. Let us continue. Thank you very much. I'm going to take next set of questions. This time I need 3 questions.
For the sake of the audience, maybe those who are behind you need to come and stand somewhere. So I'll start with him. Then you face the camera.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony Chikula. My question goes to the panelists. What measures have you put in place to reach those people in the remote areas? I can give a practical example. Most of the weekends, I spend my weekends at the farm in Chisamba. It's just about 76 kilometers from here. But I can assure you, I've seen kids who are supposed to be in school. They have never been in school, even adults at this time and age. And then we are saying we are going into literacy in a digital world. What are we going to do to jump those people from who haven't even been in class? Then you jump them straight to the digital world. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My question is tested on the factors. Looking at the factors like disabilities, people who are living disabilities, and then also the population, including the forgery, sorry, whereby looking at in a teaching sector where teachers had to forge, I think it contributed to the illiteracy. So I want them to enlighten us. I'm also thrilled with the comment which came from Temanjeli and the rest of the panel concerning the disability, that point. So I think disability also, I want them to be explicit on that one. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zelipa, and my question goes to the panelists. As it stands, many African countries have adopted the Agenda 2030 on SDGs. However, at the current rate, do you feel it will be possible to achieve the objectives considering the MDG failed despite making numerous progress?
I feel for the panelists at this particular time because those are fantastic, shocking questions. And I can see my brother trying to stretch his tie It's a good thing. It's really a good thing. So I'm going to start with him. Stretching his tie. For this one, I'm gonna shoot him. I need him. I know the rest people gonna pick, but I want him to, because he touched on this one. I want you to look at the question that came through: is what are we doing about those people in the remote areas?
Under the My Africa Foundation, I have a project that I call Save My Town Project. It started last month. I'm from Chingola, so you'll find that in Chingola we have remote areas where young people cannot read and write, just like what my brother had talked about. So what did we do? I had put together some corporate entities that we have in Chingola, and what we said is that if these people can put money together, we buy a few books that we can donate to these young people and help them help them on certain areas on issues of reading and writing. We had that session for over a month, and I think I can gladly say that in that 1 month, even when we did an exam at the end of the day, at the end of the month, we had a very good turnout. So we targeted a majority number of about 30 young people aged from 8 years old to 13 years old. It's a remote area in Chingola, like really remote, So we gave books, we gave simple textbooks, simple pens, things that can just help them, in one area or the other. Exactly. So from my point of view, I want to understand that I'm playing my role as a citizen, to see how I can help out. My concern are rural areas. Maybe if I can just comment one thing. I was given the privilege to be amongst the audience when we had young people building peace in our environment. And it was surprising that the audience we had were all entire university students. And I started asking myself a question to say, where are the Chibolia people? Where are the people in John Lane? Because if we only focus on people that are already well off, then we're not doing ourselves any justice. So even us who are seated here, let us not only center what we are doing right now to people that are already in well-off environments, but let us take this information to even individuals in Chibolia, John Lane, and all these others, all these other institutions in the remote areas. So on my part, sir, I'm doing the best I can to reach the remote areas. Just like I said, under the Save My Town project.
Just to add on, to get your question, you said how do we actually jumpstart or let's say skip a phase into the digital world for people who haven't even actually attended primary or pre-primary education. I feel it should be sort of a transition because each stage has a step. Even the modernization theory has actually stages that we have to follow for us to reach a certain level. So I feel we're not going to impose something that they don't understand when even the little that we started with, because all of us here, majority of us, to be clear, started somewhere. We actually, my grade 1, I actually was reading Zalit and Mulenga books, small words, so that I can develop to where I am right now. So I believe, even with those people, we should start small and continue building on them till they reach a certain level where we think they can go digital. Because even in the rural areas, for example, we should actually focus on bringing to them the education, quality education in that matter, which will actually provide them with the right incentives to empower them to use these digital technologies that we're moving into. That's what I believe.
Well answered, I should say. I was expecting some stammering somewhere, somehow, but you've made Zambia proud in terms of your answering. Let me get to the side of the coin. There's a gentleman that mentioned about disability. So, if I stand correct, if you had the question, so I'm hoping maybe you can take it that
one. Okay, when it comes to disability, I'll speak from the YMCA point of view. As an organization, we do not discriminate, and by that I mean we accept people as they are. And we have programs that are embracing people with disabilities. So we have the blind who come to the YMCA. We have people who are deaf who come to the YMCA, and they get that service from the YMCA. And just to talk about our disability mainstreaming, we are working with organizations such as Zafod to see how best we can tailor our outreach or our programs to these particular people. And I'll also talk about the partnership that we have with Zambian Association for Literacy. Yeah, the name is kind of yes, our partnership, I think, is doing very, very well, in that we are not only reaching out to those people who have abilities, but we are also reaching out to the people with disabilities. I don't know if you allow me to also add my comments to the other questions. Yeah. I'll also talk about the reach. How do we reach out to people in rural areas? When Shuko came to the YMCA to solicit for a partnership with the YMCA, so he was like, he was like, you know, we have these wonderful programs, and I was thinking, how best can we work with the YMCA? And I told him to say, this is a very good initiative that you have, which as a YMCA, we are not doing it the way you are doing it. But the one thing that we have as a YMCA is that we have a very wide coverage, not only in the world, but in the country as well. And so when you talk about us, what are we doing in reaching out to people in the rural areas? I believe we're doing a lot, and we are doing this through a lot of partnerships that we have. Partnerships such as the one that we have with Zalit. And this is to say that the things that Zalit is doing here in Lusaka, they'll also be doing in Lundazi with the YMCA because of the reach that we have. When it comes to the question that came from Zelipa concerning the attainment of the SDGs, bearing in mind that we failed to reach the MDGs, I think it comes back to us as individuals, okay? I, for one, in my opinion, think that the reason why we failed to reach the MDGs was because there were very poor accountability systems, okay? By poor accountability systems, I say they were poor because you and I did not do much in ensuring that we keep track of what is happening. All we did was remember that, oh, Kuriama MDGs, without knowing exactly what the MDGs were about, without knowing exactly where we were, as in the status. I'll ask this simple question, and I don't expect all of you to answer right now, but I want you to answer within yourselves. How many of you know the SDGs? How many of you have taken time to look at the indicators of those particular SDGs? How many of you know which SDGs Zambia has committed to? That's something you can think about. And when you say that we have failed, don't point at government. Don't point at civil society. Don't point at Zalit. Don't point at YMCA. Don't point at the Association of Writers. Point at yourself and say, I have failed. Because each and every one of us plays a very, very cardinal role in ensuring that we achieve these SDGs.
I want this gentleman to answer that one. I have a very burning question for him. This goes to Shuko because, you know, the question that came from Zelipa is a very good question. There was a failed system for some reason. And as the way Daniel has put it, to say it's you know, it's not the government or civil society, it's us as individuals now. My question would be, and then goes to Shuko, my question is, if we say we need people to understand about SDGs, the question is, have we done much awareness for people to understand these things? Because certain access to certain information is very, tripartite trying to access those things. But what have you put in place for people to access such informations? Are there any awareness programs that people can reach out to, or certain places they can find those things?
I don't know why he's asking me very tough questions. But anyway, we are currently, as an association or as an organization, fostering a partnership with the International Youth Council. And this has come up because there's been an overarching issue of how do we take the SDGs to the very remote areas. Because clearly, if you read all the SDG documents, they clearly talk about not leaving anyone behind. And most of the indicators are emphasizing how we will track that we have achieved these SDGs if the last person in the most remote, or the least person in the most remote area has taken stake of this development. That's when we'll say we have actually achieved sustainable development goals. So with this partnership with International Youth Council, we are launching what we're calling 17 weeks of SDGs. So each week, we are starting to launch an SDG, and then we'll have flash mobs, we'll have different education interventions around each SDG, the targets around it, to see how best we could reach out to different communities. And obviously, we cannot do this alone. We need key stakeholders, we need corporate entities. Financing such activities is a huge problem. You asked a question earlier on corporate entities' role in fostering sustainable development. We have seen a lot of these corporate entities financing entertainment shows. We know they want visibility, but at the end, it's visibility that adds value to the citizens. There's no way, well, I'm not shooting anyone. There's no way that a telecommunications firm would fund entertainment shows where people might not even buy airtime and overlook the opportunity to mainstream education in their telecommunication services. That's quite disheartening. So we should rethink how we look at this. So when you ask about how we're going to make sure that people know about the SDGs, the 17 weeks of SDGs is the answer that we are putting up. And coming to the other questions that were asked, maybe I'll start with Zelipa's question. It's very interesting if you understand the history of the MDGs and further go on to understand how the SDGs came about. So you realize that the MDGs were as a result of very few countries that committed, that came together to, it's a long essay, but then I'm just going to, okay, so we had Millennium Development Goals as MDGs, and we have Sustainable Development Goals as SDGs. So we had very few countries that came together to actually put up the MDGs. So for me, his problem was good, but the root of his problem, or the overall problem, was ownership. If 8 countries are going to make global development agendas for all the global countries, then obviously we're not going to take stake. It's going to be very hard for Zalit or YMCA to come and speak on behalf of UNILA students. We need to involve them if we have to hear their voice. So that's where the challenge really was. But achievement of SDGs, the future looks bright. A lot of countries were consulted. The consultation processes were thorough. We had civil society organizations from different walks of life after realizing the failure of the MDGs. And well, we didn't really fail lamentably. Well, there are some that we achieved. But then obviously there was still much to be desired. So there was thorough consultation. We failed to attain these MDGs. What do we do? Let's strengthen on global partnerships. Let's strengthen consultative processes. Let's consult young people, because this is 2017. 2030, how old will a young person in this room be in 2030? So this really tells you that you are the future. You're the ones that drive the Zambia, the world that you want to see. Global median age currently is at 21. African median age is 19. The Zambian median age is 16. So it tells you that we are young. And if we're going to shape the world that we want to see, we need to include everyone. And that's why the SDGs talk about leaving no one behind. So I think the future looks really, really, really bright. And when we talk of remote areas, as an association, we have been doing a study on how best we could work with remote areas. The trouble with Zambian interventions are that they lack thorough research. You find that you have no baseline study, but you are coming up with interventions that you think people need. You take mosquito nets, and later you go and find they're using them as fishing nets. That's sad, because you didn't consult the people there. So right now, we're trying to find models on how to work with rural or resource-constrained areas. And we went to Chongwe, where we visited Kanakantapa. It was very alarming that some kids walk as far as 17 kilometers to go to school. We have a lot of farms, a lot of big companies around that area who cannot even provide transportation. A bus is very free. Like it's cheap. So there are very small programs that we should not only point to these organizations that are here, but we should take ownership of as citizens. Obviously, it will break your heart to see a kid walk a very long distance. No water, no food. The shoes are almost torn. You're driving your luxurious Mercedes-Benz, and that's okay with you? So we should really rethink how we work together. We should really rethink how or what our roles really are as citizens in driving this global agenda.
All right. Let me take these comments and then we get to the conclusion of our discussion this afternoon. This one is coming from, well, some names are very good and hard to pronounce. So I think this is what you guys are saying, education. You need to understand what you're saying. So this one is from Kaloza saying, education can foster development in the sense that it can decrease the dependency ratio. And then this one from Kapeplash saying, it's sad that we have taken home setups and have let them affect our education system and living in the 21st century here. And we still have people being marginalized, and we see these are the people who contribute much in our society but are unable to read and write. Agenda 2030 just doesn't have to be on paper, but we should all participate as citizens and make it a reality, not a dream. Thank you very much for those. Please, Batoteleniko. Yeah, so I'm going to take the final comments from the panelists pertaining to number one. No, due to time, was going to accommodate you. But the best that you can do is that you can go to Zambian Association of Literacy on Facebook and then throw a comment and then they will respond due to time. Because we started late and you guys have been here. By the way, refreshments are around, so you can hold on to that smile. So I'm going to take this time to have each one of the panelists say something in terms to closing of
Good afternoon once again. I believe having such programs is not only important, but it's vital for the development of our great nation, even for the development of our great continent. One thing that I want to bring before your detail as an audience as well is that do not only sit, get the degree, get a master's degree, get a PhD, marry, have children, die. That's a systematic way of living, isn't it, right? We all know we are going to do that. Let's not be a generation of young people that are so worried about status. Let us not only ask what society can do for us, but let us also ask what we can do for society. Let us not always complain what the dying economy cannot do for us, but let us ask what we can do to resurrect our economy as young people. You know, let us not only sit and watch ends meet, but let us sit and see how we can make ends meet. That's basically what I can say, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, with everything said, I believe I'm one person who's very interested in gender issues. And I would like everyone to take a step and just think, how many times in a day do we actually discriminate against another gender in so many ways and not only one? Because mostly, even in the educational sector, let's take it back to preschool, primary, where we're being told that only girls are masters of English. Trust me, we're not. And only guys are masters of mathematics. But I have witnessed powerful girls who can calculate numbers that I can't even pronounce because the digits are just too many. So I feel for us to actually attain the education that we actually want, we have to actually do away with all forms of discrimination at all levels, even at household levels. Discrimination takes place in so many ways. For example, when you ask a male guy saying, why would you want to get married? The first thing he'll say is the chores. He wants someone to do the chores for him. But why don't you want to find a spouse who's equal to you, a spouse who's maybe even better than you, so that even the world itself would actually be better? Because I think two educated heads will actually grow not only the household, but the nation at large. Thank you.
All right, so I'm coming from an organization that consists of only young people, Network for Society Transformation. And our goal is to be part of the solution. And we have 3 key areas: leadership, finance, and public morality. So these are very important areas. And our contribution, this discussion is around education, 2030, the SDGs. So our contribution was that we saw that there's so many gaps in our economy, in our education system, and we knew that it is our responsibility. We are the young people now. Therefore, it becomes our responsibility to ensure that we make a better future for our country. And so I'm very appreciative for this initiative and to be invited on this panel to come and represent that, and to know that the young people that are interested to listen to these conversations and be a part of them. It shows that you too would like to be a part of the solution. So we would like to invite you to become part of our group if you're interested, if you think that you have something to contribute to achieving of the SDGs. Thank you.
Okay. The other side of the coin has spoken. Let's hear the other side.
Thank you. So one of the things that I always think, and one of the things that always challenge me when we have such conversations is, then what? We have sat here this afternoon, we've spent 3 hours in this room, and we've had conversations around literacy and education. Then what? What's going to happen? What's going to change? We spoke about how teachers are not passionate about teaching children. We spoke about how SDGs were not achieved. We spoke about a lot of things that are out there. But in conclusion, I want to bring it back in here. So what? You spent 3 hours of your afternoon in here. Then what? We've had these conversations over and over again. And one of my favorite quotes is the quote that says, insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results. One of the things that we firmly believe in as Junior Chamber International is we believe in the concept of active citizenship and sustainable solutions. By saying we're active citizens, all we are saying is, I see the problem and I will do something about it. You may not be able to move or fix the whole situation. One of the videos that we share is a video of a situation where there's a traffic jam and there's a tree that has fallen into the road. People are sitting in the buses getting impatient. There's a government minister who's sitting in his car whilst this tree has fallen. And guess what his government people do? They organize for another car to come that side, and the government officer jumps over this fallen tree, goes to the car that's waiting for him the other side, and goes off. A lot of people are stuck in this situation. People are getting impatient and unhappy about it. Until one small little boy gets out of the bus where he is and goes to the tree. And he starts pushing the tree. This is a very small boy. And when his friends see that he's pushing the tree, they go and join him. And they start pushing the tree. Guess what that does? The people who can actually move the tree start to come along. One person looking at this fallen tree will not move it. But when adults realized that these small children were trying to do this, all the adults came out and they started to coordinate their efforts. And they were doing that thing of counting. 1, 2, 3, lift. Slowly but surely, eventually this tree was lifted. And the point here is you don't need to be able to change the whole policy system. You don't need to be able to change the whole situation. But if you're one person who steps out and says, this here is a problem, and you start pushing in your little ways, Zalit will come to the conversation. YMCA will come to the conversation. Your friends are going to come to the conversation. And what that's going to do is that it's going to embarrass the policymakers. Because now people are going to be like, what are these kids doing, right? So eventually the adults will come into the conversation. And guess what? Even if government doesn't come to the conversation, if we as young people take responsibility and say we are the young active citizens, we are going to change things in a certain way that government may not even be able to do. So my challenge today is take personal responsibility. What are you going to do? Right? Sometimes you as the person who goes to the rural areas and sees children not in school, the rest of us may not have gone to the rural area, so we don't know that their children are out of school. Be the person who leads the conversation. There are children out of school in rural areas. Make noise about it. Until the conversation. When teachers are not being passionate about teaching children, you know what? There are children in your household. There are children in your community. When you start teaching your nieces and your nephews and cousins, the conversation goes, there's a ripple effect that starts to happen. Ultimately, yes, we want people to come to the conversation, but it begins with us. So my question from here is, then what? Take personal responsibility, be an active citizen, and start pushing that tree. Eventually your friends will come and join, and adults will come and join the conversation. The tree will move, and we'll all move. Thank you.
It's very hard to speak when Tafadzwa speaks first. She has so much wisdom, and yeah, I think she echoes Temwani's concern. If women are well spoken, I think we should call them to the table and really hear and listen. So your point is well noted, Madam Temwani. She has cemented it very well. I think from the Zambian Association of Literacy's perspective, what our take home is action orientation. It just builds on what Tafadzwa is from saying. And so what we're doing is the whole lot of this month, I know the Zalit team will be very surprised. It's off the top of my head. But I know they'll commit to this because the decision makers, I think we'll look into it. We are going to have small tokens of appreciation. We have an I Support Literacy campaign we're running right now, where people could send in their selfies, videos, stating their literacy messages, and just probably what they're doing in their communities. So show us what literacy activities you're doing in your homes, in your boarding houses, in your families, in your community, in your churches, and everywhere around you. And then the best interventions will win something. We have different awards that are being put in place. So send to the Zambian Association of Literacy Facebook page, and don't forget the hashtag I Support Literacy, or if you're a group, we support literacy. Stand a chance of winning airtime, lunch, you know, people love food, money, and movies, and yeah. So let's take ownership of all interventions. Do not wait to be big in order to start, but you need to start in order to be big. So that's our take home.
From the YMCA, an organization that empowers young people for the African Renaissance. We are saying African Renaissance for one simple reason. We want to rebrand Africa. We want to rebrand the image that Africa has been given. And we always say when we meet at the YMCA to say that there's a saying that has been going around in Africa to say, as long as okay? As long as the lions do not have their own historians, the story will always glorify the hunter, okay? It's a very, very simple but powerful proverb to say, as long as you don't tell your story, you know, the story that will be told about you will glorify the storyteller. And so the only way we will tell our story is when we play a very, very important, very vital and cardinal role in finding solutions to our problems. Let's stop this blame game that has been there since time immemorial. Every time you are faced with a challenge, nampepo yonse tikazina mizira tino boma ilanganepo kulimpepo maningi. No. Let us take it upon ourselves. What is it that you are doing? I like what Tafazwa said, you know. Take ownership, okay? Push the tree like that little boy. Don't wait for someone to come and push the tree for you and you're seated in the vehicle. So thank you.
Well, what do I have to say? I've learned about the failed SDGs, and I've learned MDGs, and I've learned about the interventions to uplift it to a different cause, as well as getting the young people involved. I think one thing for sure is that we are the problem solvers ourselves. The mantle is upon us, and we need to take responsibility. One of the first things I think is social media is a cool thing. I think parents are on social media as well. You discover you put something very funny, your father will be the first one to like it, and then you start wondering, is this okay or not? But that should remind us that digital world is real, and it's affecting us both positive and negative, but then the responsibility comes to ourselves. If we are to move to digital world and, you know, enforce the change in literacy, we need to take responsibility as young people. This is our world, and tomorrow will be mothers, the other time will be grandfathers, and then the other time we'll no more. And then, you know, we have a generation that is building, so we need to put the right words and pictures in the minds of these young. Thank you so much for coming and spending time with us. I have a gentleman who's putting on a suit to come and say something. Unfortunately, I wanted to put on my jacket, but you know, even if they say gentlemen have no weather, I had a very tiny weather with me. So let's welcome Wanangwa to come and say something before we get to close. Please, a round of applause.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. Let's clap for the panelists one more time, please. Haven't they done a good job? Who hasn't understood what they've said? I think it's been very, very clear with what they've said, and I'm sure as we walk out of this room, we'll each begin to think of ways in which we can implement what has been discussed, because it's not about talking, it's not about discussing, but it's about being action-oriented. I have with me, this is the 2016 report of the SDGs. You know, they were implemented and accepted in 2011 after the Millennium Development Goals were done. So I'll just have a quick highlight of what they are. And the first one is no poverty. The second one is zero hunger. The third is good health and well-being. The fourth one, which is very important, and this is why we're here, it's quality education. The fifth one is gender equality. I think she mentioned that on numerous occasions, you know. She was very strong and passionate about it. So, and then we have clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Number 10 is reduced inequalities. You see, this is something that even the UN has actually realized. That's why they emphasized it on 2 different occasions. And then We have number 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. Number 12 is responsible consumption and production. The 13th goal is climate action. The 14th is life below water. The 15th is life on land. The 16th goal is peace, justice, and strong institutions. And then the 17th goal is partnership for all the goals. And I think as individuals, we need to begin to figure out where we fit in. Because this is not something that will be implemented by the UN, but will be implemented by global citizens, you and I. We need to design systems that are going to be able to help us acquire progress. Steady, slow, but progress. That's the most important thing. I read a quote from SDG number 4, and it was very fundamental to me. And it says, fundamental skills provide a solid foundation to young people for further learning throughout their lives. You know, learning does not end, you know. And with literacy, with education, comes the recognition of opportunities, comes the recognition of entrepreneurship. You cannot be an entrepreneur if you don't understand the basic fundamentals of life, which are reading, writing. You know, we have so many people in different communities. What do we do as graduates, even as people who are still studying, to help people from within our communities that do not have access to education? We have cousins. We live in communities. So we need to begin to recognize and play our role. I think the panelists have discussed everything from a very, very vital and fundamental point of view. And I don't want to re-justify what they've said, because I think, personally for me, as I walk out of this room, one of the key things that I've carried with me is, what is my role? You know, these are big goals, but what is your role in society? We've been taught it's not about following what life has been structured to be, and which is you get born, you go to school, you get married, you retire, and then you just wait to die. You know, we can do so much. So, guys, let's take this time to reflect as individuals and as citizens on how best we can be part and parcel of ensuring that education is able to reach communities where people have little or no access to education. How best are we using social media or our mobile devices to ensure that we reach out to communities where people don't have such information? You know, most of us, when the story concerns any bad moral activity, we are quick to share it. But on how many occasions do we ensure that we're able to share knowledge that is going to build the society with people from within our communities? So I'll re-emphasize over and over, but if you do not take it up as your mandate, there's nothing that can be done. And moving forward, we end up realizing that these SDGs will come and pass. And another group of, you know, strategic pointers will come through without ever achieving anything. So as Zambians, as students, you know, even as patriotic members of our society, how best are we going to use the digital platforms to ensure that we're able to reach the masses and ensure that education becomes a pillar of a strong and productive economy? Because I think for education, you really have to learn the basics, beginning from, because if you don't know how to read and write, there's no way you'll be able to analyze a piece of economic writing. You see, there's no way you'll be able to recognize opportunity in terms of entrepreneurship. And doing so, you won't be able to contribute to society. So please, as you walk out of here, don't be shy to share knowledge, and look at how best you can carry these SDGs with you everywhere you go. You know, this information is available everywhere. Go to a UN agency and just pick up your copy, read it, and go through. Thank you so much, and I would like to thank the audience. You've been amazing. Everyone on social media, you've been amazing. And I would like to thank our panelists for sparing their time to be with us here. and also the media team. I would like to thank you so much. And lastly, I would like to thank National Airports Corporation. It's Zambia Airports Corporation for being such a strong, and passionate company that focuses on ensuring that education is able to go out there. So guys, looking forward to having you throughout the Literacy Month and beyond. And we look forward to engaging with you through our platforms and in the streets. Thank you so much, guys, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
This girl be the baddest. Tourist music. She don't want my time.
Hello.
Have some nice snacks over there behind. I know we can smile more. And to the Facebook viewers as well, thank you for staying with us. Until next week, we'll be back with you with more of activities where you can get to win something from Zambia Association of Literacy. It's bye-bye. It has been Gift Cosmic Piri. See you next time.
This girl be the baddest. Tourist music. She don't want my touch. She not worry about the millions, no. She don't want my touch. Nobody.
Hi, my name is Ruben Sakala, aka Batman Shapi of Urban High. My name is Wendo Mwemba, but most of you know me as the AJ from Urban High.
My name is Mbani Changaya, but y'all know me as FJ, the King of R&B of Urban High.
Literacy is connected to language, culture, and tradition. Literacy is much more than reading and writing. It weaves through all aspects of our lives, including culture, language, employment, education, justice, health, and access to services.
Literacy is for life. We support literacy. And you can be part of the campaign by sending selfies, a literacy message, or a video stating what literacy means to you to the Zambian Association of Literacy Facebook page.
We are part of the campaign. You should be too.
She not worry about the millions, no.